Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Daily Racing Form handicappers Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and I will take you through 2 Kentucky Derby preps, 2 Kentucky Oaks preps. We'll begin on Saturday at the Fairgrounds with the Grade 2 Louisiana Derby and the Grade 2 Fairgrounds Oaks, and we'll conclude at Sunland Park on Sunday with the Grade 3 Sunland Derby and the Sunland Park Oaks, featuring Grade 1 winner chasing yesterday. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment and Craig Milkowski's TimeformUS Pace Projector segment focuses on racing from Sunland, while JK's Play of the Day and David Aragona's TimeformUS Spotlight, well, they're going to take a peek at races from the Fairgrounds, plus best bets and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for Saturday's Kentucky Derby qualifying points race. It's the Grade 2 $1 million Louisiana Derby, carded as race number 13 at the Fairgrounds. It is your DRF race of the day, which means you can access free Formulator Pass performances on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. And for expanded stakes previews of all the major races all weekend long and lots more, visit video.drf.com. Matt Bernier, Todd Pletcher has had a lot of success over the years at the Fairgrounds. Heck, he and John Velasquez won this race last year. They're going 2 for 2 with Spinoff.
Yeah, we'll find out if Spinoff can handle the hiking class. He's where I ended up going. I like War of Will. I've liked him for some time. He's the horse to beat, but Spinoff to me is just an intriguing alternative. Let's go back to that most recent run at Tampa Bay Downs, when, you know, this is a horse that he's supposed to win. It's a short field. He's 3 to 5 off of a really long layoff. And I first watched this and I said, well, he's just kind of bouncing up and down. His ears are pricked, kind of looking around. But then I said, look at those fractions that he was up there pressing, and he's bouncing up and down, but he's putting nearly 8 lengths on the field. All told, it ended up being almost a 12-length victory. I kind of look at it and say, you know what, from a speed figure standpoint, from a sort of pace standpoint, I think he can get involved early. And if he's every bit of that 8 to 1 or somewhere close to that, I just think he's intriguing.
Mike, your top selection in this race might have the most natural ability of anyone in the field, perhaps save War of Will. He just hasn't put it all together from a mental standpoint just yet.
Yeah, true enough, Country House. He just feels like a real work in progress still for Bill Mott. We'll see if he can finally put everything together. The replay we're going to show you right now is his maiden win. This is 2 starts back at Gulfstream. We're going to pick it up at the start. You're not going to be able to really see it here, but he totally blows the brake here. He's behind the gate there. If you see the head on, you'll see him just make a left-hand turn out of the gate. He basically ran into the rail. He had to be pulled up. He's way back out of contention early in this race. You see him heading to the first turn way back there. But all he did in this race was make a strong move into contention, basically on his own power, caught the field coming to the stretch, and he just powers away from it at the end. This was a really impressive maiden win. And in his second start, or his first start right after this in the Risen Star, I thought he ran well, guys. He didn't break well again, but he was a clear second best to War of Will, while still looking a little bit green. Obviously, if he doesn't put everything together, he's not going to beat War of Will on this day either, but I think it's in there for him, and I think he's the most likely upsetter.
Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott says he's going to change the bit on Country House, maybe to get him to stop from drifting in the stretch as we saw last time out in the Risen Star. But the story of this race is War of Will and whether he will be able to sweep the 3 major prep races at the Fairgrounds leading up to the Kentucky Derby. He's already won the LeCompte and the Risen Star. He did so by utilizing his excellent tactical speed to gain prime, perfect stalking trips. And I think another one is coming in the Louisiana Derby. I think he's going to sit just off of Lemniscate, who recently won in gate-to-wire fashion at Gulfstream Park. I think he's going to be the first to attack on the turn. I think he'll take over this thing at about the 5/16 pole. And then the question is, does he have enough class to hold off the likes of Spinoff and Country House? Just a big, good-looking horse with the pedigree to indicate he can go longer. Not much price, but I'm going with War of Will to make it the sweep down in New Orleans this winter. We'll move from the Colts to the fillies. Fairgrounds Oaks is coming up next. Let's throw up the field for the Kentucky Oaks prep at the Fairgrounds on Saturday. This carded as race number 12. It's the Grade 2 $400,000 Fairgrounds Oaks at 1 1/16. For expanded stakes previews of all the major races all weekend long, plus lots more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. There's going to be a heavy favorite in this race, Matt, the number 2 Serengeti Empress, but Serengeti Empress's main game is speed, and Leora adding blinkers might try to put a little bit more heat on the chalk this time around.
I think Leora is kind of the key to the race. If she doesn't go and keep Serengeti Empress honest on the front, you might be looking at a carbon copy of the Rachel Alexandra, but you brought it up. The blinkers go on. We're going to go back to her career debut. This was up at Saratoga, muddy sealed track, going shorter, 5.5 furlongs. You're not supposed to judge her off this. She's come a long way since this race. She's a graded stakes winner as a 2-year-old. And I really believe that, we're in a position now where, sure, she's breaking from the outside, and perhaps that's going to be one of the best things going for her in this race. But I think the connections need to find out if she's legitimately good enough to be considered a Kentucky Oaks contender, or is it time to kind of find out if she's more of a shorter distance type or a different surface type. At the end of the day, if she doesn't go, it might be all over.
If you're not a fan of the local contingent of 3-year-old fillies down at the fairgrounds, you are looking for an outsider. Mike, is it slew good to be true?
Yeah, we'll find out. The Southern California shipper is kind of the way I wanted to go in here. If Serengeti Empress gets loose on the lead again, I don't see how she could go any slower than she did last time, but if she does, I guess she'll just win in this race. I'm hoping somebody puts some pressure on her. Slew good to be true is the 7. I wanted to take a shot with this horse. She's won both of her starts since they stretched her out, 2 for 2 around 2 turns. We'll look at her most recent race. This isn't an optional claimer allowance race. Now, it's worth noting that the heavy favorite in this race did dump her rider at the start, and it really made her job a lot easier in here. But I just like the trips that she gets, and I like the way that she finishes in her races. It seems like she's still going at the end, and if Serengeti Empress can just get softened up a little bit, maybe this horse can run her down.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with all those reasons that Mike laid out. She's not run a poor race in 4 lifetime starts, but she's really seemed to excel going out to 2 turns. And it's also worth noting the runner-up that day, we just saw her next out winner with a 77 buyer. So the form of that race has held up relatively well. But like Mike said, really, it just boils down to, does somebody keep Serengeti Empress honest up front?
I just think you guys are giving Serengeti Empress a little bit of short shrift. I mean, I think she's the speed nearest the rail, and even if Leora is hustled out of there, it's quite possible that Serengeti Empress is simply faster. And the main goal for all of these fillies is the Kentucky Oaks. They want to get points. I don't think Leora is going to completely burn herself out chasing Serengeti Empress. And yes, she did get a nice, easy lead in the Rachel Alexandra, her most recent start. But I think there's going to come a point in time midway down the backstretch in this race that she's going to get a breather. And if that's the case, the rest of these horses are in trouble. Let's go back to her coming out party last year. This was at Ellis Park in the debutante. And this was a sprint race, but this is the way Serengeti Empress wins races. She leaves absolutely no doubt. She won this race by almost 15. She then went to Churchill Downs and won a race by double digits. And last time out, she won the Rachel Alexandra by almost 5 lengths or so. And I think the key to this race, as we have already discussed, is whether Leora can put pressure on Serengeti Empress. I think she's just faster. Short price, not great. Sometimes short price better than long face. We'll go to Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment. She'll talk about some of the races at Sunland, as well as Craig Milkowski's TimeformUS pace projector focusing on the Sunland Derby.
Hi everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you for Out of the Gate to take a closer look at the field for this weekend's Sunland Derby, for which the favorite is Another Twist of Fate, trying to earn his way into the Kentucky Derby. The big question is how he'll run on dirt. Finished 9th on debut and his only start on dirt, sprinting 6 furlongs. You know that I believe in giving horses mulligans on debut, and I'll especially give him a break because of the distance. He's gone on to win 3 straight routes, but at Golden Gate on the synthetic surface, including the 7-leg score in the El Camino Real Derby. At Sunland, he gets what he likes, distance, but makes that surface change. Another Twist of Fate is from the final crop of Scat Daddy, who of course we know is a multi-purpose sire. His runners on dirt led by Justify, who of course swept last year's Triple Crown. But I would like to see a strong dirt pedigree on the bottom to back him up. And while Another Twist of Fate is from a very classy female family that gives him added stamina, most of its success on turf. He's out of the first defense mare Impreciation, who raced in France. Her only other runner was placed in England. Impreciation, a half-sister to Nebraska Tornado, a multiple Group 1 winner who took the French Oaks, into Mirabilis, who won the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. Both those mares stakes producers. Nebraska Tornado, the dam of standout steeplechase horse Cornhusker, which I always interpret steeplechase lines and pedigrees as more evidence of stamina. Mirabilis producing Group 2 winner Monarch's Glen. So while I do think Another Twist of Fate is a classy horse, do think he's going to continue to relish distance, do think that maybe the dirt is not his surface, and you might be able to look for value elsewhere in the Sunland Derby. Sometimes being able to form an opinion to play against a horse is a decent starting point, and I do think it's a wide open field behind him. Thanks for tuning in as we take you through all of this weekend's action on Out of the Gate, including a couple of Kentucky Derby preps as the Run for the Roses gets ever closer.
Hi, this is Craig Mulkowski at TimeformUS for this week's Pace Projector segment on Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to talk about the Sunland Derby, which is being run Sunday at Sunland Park, obviously. It's a 3-year-old race at 1.125 miles on dirt, and it offers points towards the Kentucky Derby. A win in this race gets you 50 points and pretty much a guaranteed spot in the gate for the winner on the first Saturday in May if the connections choose to go. Let's start out by looking at the preview page, and you can see in the upper right-hand corner, part of why I chose this race is because the pace projector shows that red flag, see details, and that's going to indicate that we think the pace is going to be fast. Now, a fast pace doesn't always necessarily think that make us think a closer is going to win the race, but it does indicate that speed horses may have a little bit of trouble more than they normally would. So let's take a closer look at that pace projector, and you'll note in the bottom left-hand corner of the pace projector that we have one horse who isn't shown, and that's because he would be so far off the screen that it would make the graphic too large. So we just put that he's a deep closer, and that means that he would be more lengths back than we're able to show. In this segment, I am going to mention that horse briefly at the end. He's not a horse I think is a win contender, but I am going to talk about him just a little bit. Now let's look. I'm going to start by looking at the 3 morning line choices. There are also 3 horses who favor speed, who are shown as leaders. I didn't mention that on the preview page, but I did highlight it. A full 5 of the 10 entered in here have a TimeformUS running style of leader, which is a big part of why this race is shown as a fast pace. The field size is also part of it, but mostly it's just a running style of the horses. We got a lot of horses that want to be up front. So let's start with number 1, Mucho Gusto. He ships in for trainer Bob Baffert. He's the morning line favorite in here at 8-5. And he's done very little wrong in his career. You can see he's won 3 out of 4. His one loss was to Improbable, who ran a very close second in one of the divisions of the Rebel last week at Oaklawn Park. And, you know, he's a horse. He did show a little tactical speed last out when he won the Lewis. He didn't have to go wire to wire today. But he draws inside, and I think he's going to have to go, you know, from the get-go to keep that position that he's going to win early. He's definitely not a horse that's going to drop 10 lengths out of it. So I think this is going to be a little tougher. It certainly wouldn't shock me if he wins the race, but he's definitely a downgrade for me in here. Another California shipper is another Twist of Fate. He's a horse who's just been all speed. But the one thing to notice in TimeformUS PPs is those last 3 races are on a track that you can clearly see the blue as opposed to brown. And that's because it's a synthetic surface. It jumps right out at you. You can see the clear difference in color. Now, I'm not going to sit here and proclaim the horse hates dirt because he didn't run well on it first time out in his career in his debut. Lots of horses don't run well in their debut, but dirt is definitely a question mark here. And the one thing you'll notice is you have to run faster to get the lead on dirt for the most part than you do on synthetic surfaces. So I think he's really got his work cut out, and as a horse who's looking to take a lot of money, he's one I'm going to be against for sure. The local horse in here is Hustle Up, the 3 horse. He's 5-1 on the morning line, I believe. And he's a horse that's just pure speed. He's raced 10 times. He's won 8. Some of actually, you can see him in our past performances, but for the graphic here, I cut it a little bit short. He's won sprinting wire to wire in races as short as 4.5 furlongs. This time he's trying 1 1/8 miles, but you can see this horse just goes. He opens up big leads and plays catch me if you can, and way more often than not they haven't been able to catch him. But this is a step up in competition. I just wanted to highlight him as he's a horse that's sure to be a part of the pace in here, and I think he really is setting up a very fast pace, and that's why I'm moving on to the next horse. The horse I'm going to go with in here is Wicked Indeed. He's a horse. Now, this is no slowpoke by any means. He definitely has some early speed. You can see he doesn't often drop way back. But he ran a nice second last time behind Hustle Up in the local prep for this race, the Mind That Bird Derby. He was wide the whole way around both turns. The pace was pretty quick. So I think he's going to get a better trip in here, hopefully be able to save some more ground, get an even faster pace. And he is definitely going to be my selection. He's one I think is going to run very well for trainer Steve Asmussen. You can see 2 back when he was beaten 6 lengths. He was in against War of Will, who's entered in the Louisiana Derby on Saturday. So by the time this race goes off, we should know just a little bit more about him and what kind of competition he was facing that day. But I feel he had a tough trip that day. The pace was kind of slow. He was kind of boxed inside a little bit. And it was just a tougher race, better competition. I think he's improving. You can see his speed figures improved every start, even the last time, despite the wide trip. So I think he is going to be one that's going to offer some value in here. The other horse I did want to mention is the one that was off the back end of the pace projector, so we didn't see his number. He just got the little note, and that's Pasamonte Man. He has our best TimeformUS late pace rating in the field. And while his speed figures are lacking, you can see he ran a 96 last out when he was 4th in that Hustle Up Mind That Bird Derby. But I think he's a horse who's really going to get things his way, and I will definitely be using him with Wicked Indeed in my try and superfecta bets on the lower end of those tickets. That's it for this week for TimeformUS for Out of the Gate in the Pace Projector segment, and I'll see you again next week.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, TimeformUS pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for Sunday's Kentucky Derby prep. It is at Sunland Park. It is the Grade 3 Sunland Derby. $800,000 is the purse. These 3-year-olds will go 1 1/8 miles, and it's carded as race number 11. For expanded stakes previews of all the major races all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt Bob Baffert got shut out last week in both divisions of the Rebel. His horses ran fine. He's got the horse to beat as he attempts to rebound at Sunland.
Yeah, this is an uninteresting pick for me with Mucho Gusto, but I just think whether you think the pace is going to be honest and he sits just off, or you think there's a scenario where he's down on the rail and he just goes on with it because he's the best horse, I think no matter how you chop it up, he probably works out a cushy trip. We're going to go back to his Robert B. Lewis, and sure, you can go back in hindsight and say, all right, Gunmetal Gray, easy shot, overmatched. One's a plotter, one probably wants to go shorter. I just thought visually this was really impressive. He did everything that I possibly could have hoped that he would have done here in his first start as a 3-year-old. He finished very well, and I've long kind of been concerned about distance with him. Maybe he'd be better going shorter. Based on that effort right there, guys, I don't know that I can really question distance here. I just think he's kind of an obvious pick in here.
Mike, there are a lot of questions surrounding your top selection in this race. Surface being one of them. Whether he'll be able to make the lead in a race filled with other speeds. There is no denying that on a synthetic surface, at the very least, another Twist of Fate's got a load of ability.
Yeah, he's a real talented horse. We'll see if he's a real talented horse on dirt, because that's the real question. I don't know if he is, and I'm not way against Matt's pick in here, Mucho Gusto, who I was very impressed with his last win as well. But I just wanted to give another Twist of Fate a chance on dirt here. The distance is no problem for him, and I think he's a really talented horse. If he's not good on dirt, then they can regroup and go to different races with him. And he really doesn't have a dirt pedigree. He's a scat daddy, a ton of turf on the bottom. But let's look at his last win. This is the El Camino Real. This is his 3rd win in a row. All of them on synthetic, and this is at 1 1/8 miles as well. And he just powers home in this race. This is a horse who you can tell right here has no distance limitations at all. At 9 furlongs, final 3/8 and 36 and change in here. This horse is running through the wire. If he handles dirt, I think this is a field he can beat. And he's not going to be the favorite in here, so I'll give him the chance.
I think he might have to deal with a horse like Hustle Up, who is very, very sharp right now, a horse like Diamond Blitz. Those 3 horses might go for the early lead. That could put Mucho Gusto in a great spot after breaking from the inside post. He might work out the best trip of them all, but I wonder if Wicked Indeed can take a step forward for Steve Asmussen. This horse could not get to Hustle Up in the local prep, the Mind That Bird Derby, but I thought he had to move early. Luis Contreras had him on the outside on the backstretch, and a horse horse loomed to his outside. So he made a 4-wide bid all the way through the turn and into the stretch, and he tried to reel in Hustle Up, who had been loose on the lead throughout, and Hustle Up is no bum. He has won 8 of 10 lifetime. This is his racetrack. A mile and a 16th probably plays to Hustle Up's hands. Wicked Indeed's going to keep grinding and keep grinding and keep trying, and he's only going to get beat a length despite all that ground loss on the turn. Now, he is going to have to run, obviously, the fastest race of his life if he's going to take down the 2 favorites in the Sunland Park Derby, but I think he's got enough pedigree, being a full brother to My Miss Lily, a graded stakes winner at 9 furlongs, and I'm hoping that pace is fast and contested, and then Wicked Indeed might be able to pull off a little bit of an upset. We finished with the Sunland Derby. Let's go to the fillies. The Sunland Oaks is headed by Chasing Yesterday. Let's take a peek at the field for Sunday's Kentucky Oaks qualifying race. It is the Sunland Oaks. $200,000 is the purse. We are going a mile and a 16th. This race carded as race number 9. A major scratch to announce. The number 9, Bellafina, will not ship to Sunland Park. She will remain at Santa Anita. That will leave the 7, Chasing Yesterday, a prohibitive favorite in the Sunland Oaks. For expanded stakes previews of all the major stakes races all weekend long, plus lots more, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. The local hope in the race, Matt, down towards the inside, and this is a filly with a big pedigree.
Yeah, Victim of Love really is a nice little filly, and like you say, she's the local hope exiting that island fashion. We can throw that replay up right now. The real thing, or the knock anyway, that I have for Victim of Love, she hasn't done anything wrong in 2 turn races. She's disqualified 1 time. She's actually crossed the wire first 3 out of 4 times. She's game, she's gutsy, she goes on with it, and from a running style standpoint, I actually think she fits in here quite nicely. The problem is, where's her fast race? And I'm not suggesting she's incapable of doing it, but I don't know that I want to take 4-1 on a field like this, or a horse like this in a field like this where there is some legitimate company. And I just don't know. Maybe she doesn't have that next gear. Until she proves to me that she does, I don't know that I can take her in a spot like this.
It's a fair point, to be sure. She has run slowly, but she has run well, especially since the blinkers come on. And again, she's got that pedigree. She's a full sister to Benner Island, who I think won the 8 Bells, the Damn Spacey Tracy, a graded stakes winner as well. Mike, the obvious pick in this race is Chasing Yesterday, but enlisting in her first start on dirt, I know it was a maiden claiming race. I know it was a wet track.
Yeah.
This is easy.
Yeah, this is a very, very impressive win for the filly. She made her first 2 career starts on turf at huge prices. Didn't run terrible, but didn't win either of those races either. Let's look at her maiden win now. This was rained off the turf, maiden 50s. We're picking it up in the stretch, and she's already taken this thing over. She never gets out of a gallop in there. She just absolutely airs on this field and looks like a horse who just really appreciated the switch over to dirt, and maybe she was a dirt horse all along. Chasing Yesterday is going to be very hard to beat in this race, it seems like, but it's not like, you know, even though she won a grade 1 at the end of last year, I was blown away by that win. She ran fine in there. With Bellafina not shipping, enlisting doesn't have to beat 2 big horses. She only has to beat 1, and I'm willing to take a chance that she could beat 1.
Matt, but let's talk about the marquee horse in this race, and that is going to be Chasing Yesterday. You've got the connections, trained by the great Bob Baffert. You've got the pedigree. She's by Tappet, and she happens to be a little half-sister to American Pharaoh. And you've got the performance. She's already a grade 1 stakes winner.
Grade 1 stakes winner going long. She's a stakes winner going shorter. And the other thing, too, to throw in here, if you draw a line through that spin away, she's an omnifig in here. No one else has even approached what she's done. The spin away, obviously a bit of a disaster. Let's take a look at the Starlet, though. This is her last start as a 2-year-old last year. You see how wide she is, and I understand you'd rather be wide at Los Alamitos than buried down on the inside, but she gave up quite a bit of ground. I thought this was a really gutsy effort for her to go and run down some nice horses, including Anaya Al-Rab, who has come back to flatter the form of this here as an early 3-year-old. Mother, another Baffert horse who's decent enough. Guys, I know it's, you know, Captain Obvious chalk eating weasel over here, but I just think she's a nice filly, and if she takes any sort of reasonable step forward here as a 3-year-old in her first start, I just think she's going to be too much for this field.
Nah, she's way the horse to beat, and as we talked about in the stakes preview, she'd be my only A in the 50-cent pick 4. This is what this kicks off. But I do want to have a backup, and I want to play enlisting. Mike's top selection if she goes off at a playable price. She's catching Chasing Yesterday off the layoff, and maybe if you're going to beat Chasing Yesterday, it's going to be off the layoff, or maybe she's using this race as an obvious springboard to the Kentucky Oaks. I liked what I saw in that last race. Maybe she wasn't beating anything, and maybe the waters are just way too deep. But as Mike said, and I think he put it perfectly, you don't have to beat 2 now with Bellafine out. You only have to beat 1, and that 1 is coming off the layoff. Chasing yesterday the horse to beat, I take a small stab against with Enlisting. JK's play of the day. He's got some races at the Fairgrounds he wants to discuss. David Aragona from TimeformUS. He's going to take a closer look at the Nolans handicap on Louisiana Derby Saturday. Then stay with us. Our best bets are coming up.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's play of the day. It's a pick 4 sequence down in Louisiana, Fairgrounds Racetrack, the Louisiana Derby Day. Always an unbelievable card. 13 races for you. We're going to give you the late pick 4, which is starting in race 10, 10, 11, 12, and 13. We'll start with the New Orleans handicap. I'm going to use one lone A horse. In this pick 4 sequence I'm going to give you, I'm going to use a couple of single horses and then use some backups, thinking that at least 1 or 2 of these horses will run well enough to help this ticket stay alive. In the first leg, I'm going to lone A, Lone Sailor. I think Lone Sailor is going to get a big setup in here. He was closing into a slow pace last time off of a little bit of a break. I think that horse could really improve, could get the pace setup I think that he needs with some of the speed horses signed on here to the outside of the field. So I'm going to single, as a single A horse. I'm going to use 2 horses as B horses. I'm going to use the 8 Mr. Buff and the 10 Copper Bullet. I think those 2 horses have some speed. If for whatever reason it doesn't end up materializing into the pace meltdown that I think it may, I think one of those 2 have a great shot of holding on, but I definitely feel like Lone Sailor's the play in here. So I'm going to lone A, the 2-horse Lone Sailor. I'm going to use 2 B horses in the 8 and the 10 as the speeds that could potentially hold on if it doesn't fall apart. On to the Munez, the mile and 8th turf race. Our buddy Divisadero shows back up in here, but he has to face the Pegasus Turf winner, Bricks and Mortar. I tried to beat Bricks and Mortar Pegasus Day down in South Florida. I couldn't do it then. I'm not going to try to do it now. He seems to be a pretty talented turf runner. I'm going to lone A, Bricks and Mortar in this spot, and then I'm going to use 2 B horses. Those 2 B horses will be Divisadero and Synchrony. Synchrony obviously loves the Fairground turf course, so I'm going to use those horses in that order. On to race 12, the Fairgrounds Oaks. I tried to find something creative here. I tried to beat Serengeti Empress on Breeders' Cup Day. I was successful that day. I tried to beat her in her last race, I believe the Silver Bullet Day, or maybe it was the Rachel Alexandria. I was unsuccessful that day. She earns my respect. I think she's too tough for these. I'm going to lone A there with no B horses with the 2 Serengeti Empress. And then on to the Louisiana Derby. I think War of Will is a standout in here. I'm going to use him as my lone A, the 6 horse. I'm going to use Country House, the 8 horse, as my lone B. He was green as ever last time in the stretch. Hopefully Hall of Famer Bill Mott can get that sorted out. If he can, I think he could turn the tables on War of Will. Talented horse. Country House is. I'll use him as the lone B. And then I'm going to throw in some long shots. A little Steve Asmussen love. The 3, Limonite. The 9, Bank It, and the 10 spin-off, a little Todd Pletcher love in there too. All 3 of those horses should be fair enough prices considering the money that I think Country House and War of Will take. So the A horse there will be the 6, War of Will. The B horse will be the 8, Country House, and the C horses will be the 3, 9, and 10. Pop that in DRF Ticketmaker. Make sure that you press your A's more than you press the A's with 1B, and then also the A's with 2 B's. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with this week's TimeformUS Spotlight. There's an excellent series of graded stakes races on Saturday at the Fairgrounds, and I want to focus on one of the undercard stakes. It's the New Orleans Handicap, which goes as race 10. This stakes race drew a competitive field of runners with no clear favorite, and I want to start out by taking a look at the TimeformUS pace projector because we are predicting a fast pace to develop, and 2 of the horses that are going to be among the shorter prices in this field are predicted to be close to the pace. That would be number 8, Mr. Buff, who is a real need the lead type, as well as the number 10, Copper Bullet, who does seem to run his best races when he is placed close to the early pace, and they could be hindered by the number 7, Noble Commander, who's a long shot in this race, but you have to think he's going to be sent out towards the lead since he has run his best races when he's able to secure the lead on the front end. We'll start out by taking a look at the number 6 horse, Silver Dust, who is the morning line favorite, and I think you have to respect this horse off his win in the Mineshaft Handicap last time. That was his career best effort as he won that race by 2 1/4 lengths at 5-1. but I'm a little bit skeptical that he could repeat that performance stretching out to the mile and an eighth in this New Orleans handicap. And if he's going to be the favorite in this race, I want to take a small shot against him, because you look at the TimeformUS pace figure line for that mine shaft, and they were just going so slowly up front. All of those interior pace figures are color-coded blue, just indicating how slow they were going on the early lead. And Silver Dust just got a perfect trip. He was sitting pretty close to that pace on the outside. He was able to make the first move at the top of the stretch and just kind of broke the race open. He's a horse that's been successful going shorter distances in the past, so he has that burst of speed that sprinters often possess, and he's able to use that to create some distance at the top of the stretch of that mine shaft and just hold sway at the end of that race. I don't think that, even though it was a two-turn race, I don't think that was a true test of his stamina, and I'm somewhat dubious that he can stretch out to the mile and eighth distance in a more true run race. I just think if the pace is honest this time, he might have trouble seeing out the trip. Lone Sailor is the horse that I would take out of the mine shaft if I was going to take any horse out of that race, because you see those blue color-coded pace figures, and I mean, that doesn't tell the whole story. They were just walking up front. The pace was ridiculously slow in the early part of the race, and Lone Sailor just was up against it. They made no attempt to get him into the race heading into the first turn. They just reserved him at the back of the pack, even away from the kickback. I mean, he was just so far back in the early going of that race. He made a bit of a late run in the stretch coming up the inside, but he never was really in contention. I just don't think that race set up for him whatsoever. It was just basically a tightener, a glorified workout, and he should be fitter for this second start off the layoff. Going back to his 3-year-old season, this horse danced every dance. He ran plenty of competitive TimeformUS speed figures. He's certainly proved he's classy enough to win a Grade 2 stakes race, and I think he's a horse that you have to use in this race. We'll see if that fast pace actually develops that is predicted by the TimeformUS pace projector. That would certainly help him, but he's a horse that's a little bit hard to trust just because he's had his chances to win on a number of occasions, and while he always runs well, he rarely gets the job done, and it's just always hard to trust deep closers like him in large fields. I'm definitely using him, but he's not a horse that I'm confident enough to pick on top. An interesting new face in this New Orleans handicap is Mr. Buff, who's coming in from New York. I'm very familiar with this horse, following the New York circuit very closely, and Mr. Buff is a horse that I think looks a little bit better than he actually is off his win in the Jazzle last time. January 26th was a weird day at Aqueduct, where the track started to tilt towards inside runners in the second half of the card, and then on Sunday, the day after, January 27th, we saw a gold rail throughout the day. So I really think Mr. Buff was helped by the fact that he was setting a moderate to slow pace on the rail throughout that day. I think that exaggerated his winning performance. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a good horse, and even before that, I mean, he's reeled off 4 straight victories. I just think that last speed figure in that blowout nature of that victory, it's not a true indication of where he's at right now, and if he doesn't get a clear lead in this race, he could be in trouble. I respect a horse like him that's in good form. He's just not a horse that I want to pick on top at a relatively short price. I'm taking a shot with the number 11 Core Beliefs, and I'm hoping to get somewhere around the 6-1 morning line on him. I don't totally trust him coming off the layoff because Peter, his trainer, doesn't have the best numbers with horses coming off layoffs, but he just strikes me as the kind of horse that could really take a step forward, moving from his 3-year-old season to his 4-year-old campaign, because he was relatively lightly raced last year. He only took a few shots against the top horses in the division. He was no match for Drftv going back to the Sunland handicap, but once he got back to easier company in the Peter Pan, I liked his effort that day. I thought he ran very well to beat Lone Sailor in that Ohio Derby, earning a 125 TimeformUS speed figure. That number translates very well to this field. I think he could win this race if he repeats a figure like that. And then his last 2 races, the Haskell and the Pennsylvania Derby, I think on both of those cards, at Monmouth and at Parks, you didn't really want to be on the rail in either of those races, and his riders just stuck him right down inside, weren't as aggressive as they probably should have been in those races, and he just got the wrong trips for the way that those races played out. I think he's better than both of those performances, and I think he can take a big step forward in his first start off the layoff as a more mature horse. He's got to work out the right trip from the outside post position, but I'm hoping for Laurent Giroux can get him into a good stalking position, and I think he's good enough to beat this field. So I'm hoping to get around 5 or 6-1 on Core Beliefs in the New Orleans handicap on Saturday. Now let's send it back to the studio.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Matt, your best bet had tons of trouble last time, and I think that's even an understatement.
Yeah, it wasn't a pretty trip for Ding Dong Ditch, and guess what? I put him immediately into my horse watch. I didn't know what spot he'd show up in. Well, he shows up here in the 7th at Gulfstream on Saturday. It's a non-winners of 2 lifetime $16,000 claimers. let's take a look at it, because it ain't pretty. If you bet on this horse last time, like I at least was planning on, it was a situation where I'm glad I didn't, because when you see this, he's in the blue cap and those sort of yellow and blue checkers in between, nowhere to go. Look, it was a good trip until it wasn't at this point, and this is all bad enough. You still think there's an opportunity. Perhaps you'll be able to split horses somewhere. Well, he tries to get out to the outside, nowhere to go. Look, the tape tells the story here. Now, the fact that he only loses by about a length and a half, I think, goes to show this level, he is head and shoulders above anybody else in this field. Then you couple that with the fact that he was with Todd Pletcher in that race, which is well enough. Now he goes out for Jorge Navarro. I apologize. He's probably going to be 2-5 when it's all said and done. But I think Ding Dong Ditch is the most likely winner by a long shot.
Mike, generally I know you don't like to play long layoff horses, but in the case of Core Beliefs, he just might have found the right field, and he's going to be a good price.
Yeah, especially want to avoid layoffs at short prices. It doesn't feel like he's going to be a short price, though, so I'm willing to take the chance. The race 10 at the Fairgrounds is the New Orleans Handicap Grade 2, and he's just the horse that I want here. There are several newly turned 4-year-olds. I think he has a chance to be the best of these horses. We'll see if he's ready off the bench. We're going to go back to look at a replay of him as a 3-year-old. This is also a 9-furlong race. This is the Ohio Derby Grade 3. He just was wide every step of the way. Look at the horse down towards the inside, the 3. That's Lone Sailor, who's also in this race. Lone Sailor saved all the ground, got the split in the stretch, and actually gets to the lead. But Core Beliefs just outfinishes him. After this race, he made 2 more starts in Grade 1s. He did not get the right trip or ride in either one of those 2 races. I think this horse is a lot better than he looks, and if he can take a small step forward off the bench, this is a field he can beat at a fair price.
I'm going to go to the feature race at Mike's neck of the woods, Aqueduct, race number 8. Number 8, that's Miss Imperial in the Cicada Stakes for 3-year-old fillies. And I think the turn back from 7 furlongs to 6 is really going to be key for Miss Imperial. Let's go back to her most recent race. That race was at 7 furlongs, and she was contesting the pace 3 wide, arguably on the deeper outside footing, all the way on the backstretch and into the turn. And she's confronting now the rail-skimming runner Ujawi turning into the lane. Looks like Miss Imperial is the favorite, has the momentum, but Ujawi, perhaps on the better footing, perhaps better suited to the 7 furlongs, is able to outfinish Miss Imperial. Cutting back to 6 furlongs, drawing this outside post, I think an ideal outside stalking trip is coming. And as we talked about in the stakes preview, Jason Service over the past year, 3-year-old dirt sprinters, 45 to 60-day layoffs, he's 9 for 11 with 11 on the board. Miss Imperial will be my best bet. That's race number 8 at Aqueduct on Saturday. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow the latest DRF TV offerings on Twitter. Please follow at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Form, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break. Out of the Gate.